This is a Diamond Elite, it's called. So it's a bandsaw. If you're not familiar with the different types of saws, a bandsaw has a thin blade, like a wood bandsaw. The coating on this is on the front of the blade, so you always cut towards the front of the blade. I think we were just talking a couple minutes before. I think we have some videos out there, Delphi does, on our YouTube channel, I'm pretty sure, that has more about how to operate these, which wasn't really what we planned on doing today, was really talking more about changing a blade. But ask questions if you have questions. So this is the Diamond Elite bandsaw. And to change the blade, what we have to do is open this front panel here. So I'm just going to loosen it up. And that whole thing just swings open. You can see the inner workings. So one of the things I like about this particular saw, and I think maybe you feel the same way now.
I'm sure I do.
Is that it's relatively easy to replace the blade. Wouldn't you
Well,
agree?
I'm not sure I can speak to that so much. I think it's been so long since
you've changed one?
Since I've changed one.
There you go. That's how durable they are.
I'm learning too. I'm revisiting this. So.
But since I have this front open, I wanted to talk something real quick about the setup on this particular saw. It's one of these little weird pet peeves of mine with this saw. So when you get it from the factory, it looks pretty much like this. And you can see this is the blade guide. And this is what helps stabilize the blade. And you'll see how high it is off the table. So we can adjust this so that it's closer to the table. Because my thinking is, we have all this space where the blade can move a little bit more. So normally you want this blade guide as close to the work surface that you can get it. So depending on how thick the glass is that you're trying to cut, but we should drop this. And to make this a little bit easier, you can maybe see the inside of it. There's a hole there on this whole arm of this blade guide. And there's a knob here on the back, and I'm going to actually loosen it up and take it all the way out. So this knob was back there. I took the whole thing off. And now what I'm going to do is just put it in the top hole.
No,
I'm not
you weren't even close. There you go.
Thanks. And it's a good thing you're here to help me with that.
I'm sure.
So then I'm just putting the knob in the top hole because now, if you can see how low I can get the blade guide to the table, right? When it was in the other hole, I couldn't get this close. I mean, obviously you don't want to be this close. You want to be just above, the thickness of the glass, whatever you're cutting, whether it's 1/8 inch or 1/4 inch or whatever. So that's one little thing I always do, real quick. Let's show you how to change the blade. So this knob here on top of the saw, what this is going to do is raise or lower the wheel. And so I'm going to drop the wheel down, which then will make this blade loose, and I'm going to just slide it off the wheel. Now what's on the back of the saw is, and I can turn it, or maybe Kaylee can show you a little bit, is this knob, and this is the important knob. This knob, think of it as locking that wheel in place. So the very first thing we have to do is loosen this one, and just loosen the knob, and now the wheel on the front is loose. You probably can't really notice it, but yeah, maybe you can see there's a little more play here now in the wheel. So now what I'll be able to do is by turning this, I can lower the blade or raise the blade. And in this case, I'm going to lower the blade, and then I can just slide.
Lower the wheel?
I'm sorry, yes. Good thing. Ooh, lower the wheel.
Good thing I'm here.
And then just slide the blade right off. And so you can see how the blade just pops right off. Now, this particular saw has a, on the table here, there's a screw here, so this is where I need
What would you need? This one?
The big one.
The big one. Here you go.
Thanks. I think you knew that.
It's a Phillips, though. I know that.
It is a Phillips. Very good. I know. So this one does have a screw here, which just helps keep the table level. And you need to take that out so you can then slide the blade off. Right? And then we would slide off the bottom wheel.
And the bottom wheel doesn't move. You don't loosen that?
Nope, the bottom wheel does not move. You shouldn't have to ever loosen the bottom wheel, right? That comes kind of set from the factory. Okay. There's ways of doing it, but
right. Well, that's good to say, because
do
sometimes trying to get the tension tight, I think people mess it up a little bit by trying to adjust both those
That's
wheels.
a great point. Yeah. So like if you are trying to get the blade off, you shouldn't have to do anything to the bottom wheel. You shouldn't have to loosen it up. There is a set screw inside here that actually does loosen that bottom wheel, but you don't really want to play around with that because then you start to mess up with the alignment of the blade and then of the wheel, and then the blade doesn't align properly. So it really is best just to mess around with the top.
And that's usually when your blades break too, right? Sometimes when you
yeah, I would agree with that. Right.
And then that means you got to replace that much sooner than you would have had to.
So then I'll show you how to put it back on. But before we do that, so what's always a great idea is when you're replacing a blade, I'm assuming because it's worn out, right? Or maybe it broke, which would be not good. But you're replacing the blade. What you should always look at are the blade guides. And so this particular saw has 2 blade guides. There's one here. It's behind these little brass wings. You'll see this nylon sort of white colored block. And then there's one underneath the saw here, another guide. And what that does is help track the blade, and it also will help the blade from having too much movement. So this top blade, this top block, I can show you one right here. I got one in a package. The top block is solid. So all 4 sides are solid. And so as you're using it, what's nice about it is you can actually loosen up a set screw and replace that block. You can just rotate it and use another surface. What you're going to do is you can probably even see it on, you can see it on this one, right? So you can see the line that's cut in there. So the blade's going to do that, and that's totally fine. That's normal. But when that starts to get too deep, that's when it's time to switch and use a new surface. So usually for me, it's like if it's as deep as the blade is wide. So if you start getting this deep of a cut, then it's time to replace or use another side of your block, right? So if you loosen it up with a set screw here, I can go ahead and do it if you want me to do it. Right, so we would use an Allen wrench, and then you would loosen up this block. I'm guessing on the size, and I was wrong. Exciting. This is always exciting. Good.
So many different sizes.
So many. And then you would just loosen this up until you can pop out that block, which, there we go. Right. So you don't need to take the set screw all the way out. You just need to get it loose enough to take this out, which for some reason I thought. And then you can see how there's a nice groove cut in that. And if you look at the top of it, I know it's kind of hard to see, but it's cut. Here on the bottom, it's cut almost through to the, halfway through, which again, it's definitely time to change it. So all I'm going to do is just rotate it and slide it back in so I have a new surface on there. And then I like to keep it flush with this housing here. So don't bring it all the way down there because then it's going to interfere with how close you can get to the glass, right? So just kind of keep it there. And then same deal. Then we're just going to tighten up this set screw, keep that in place. You'll notice also on the front of this, there's 2 little brass wings, they're called, and that also helps keep the blade in place. Normally those hold up really quite well. If you're doing a lot of cutting, you might see that they start to get worn, and then usually when you buy a set of the blade guides, you get a new set of brass wings also. But let me show you the bottom one. So the bigger of the 2 blade guides is the bottom one, and this one does have a line in it, already cut into it, and that is used to just really help track the blade, so the blade tracks better and doesn't wander around as much. And so on the bottom, we're gonna, have the blade will rest right inside there. Now, what I always do is if I turn this thing 2 times, then I'll take this one down here and flip it just totally over, because the top of the block is going to get more worn than the bottom of the block, right? Because most of the pressure is coming from here. So we're going to wear out the top of that block faster than the bottom. So after you flip this a couple times, just take this one out, flip it over, slide it back in, put it down in. So that's using the blade guides. Look at that. It's nice.
Nice.
So then I got to put this blade back on. So
yes, you do.
That's what I was. So I always start at the bottom, right? So get this here on the bottom.
Make sure you're turned right.
Yeah, good point, right? Yeah, make sure the diamond coating is going to be facing out. Sometimes it's hard to tell because the coating is not real thick on there. And then we're going to slide behind this thing. This is just like a little splash guard here to help keep some of the water down. I'm going to slide it over there. I'm on the wheel. Oh, the other thing you should not have your saw plugged in, right? I mean, this is probably a good time to not have any power to your saw.
Right.
Which we don't.
We don't.
Nope. For some reason. Oh, I know. I'm stuck on something. Sorry. There's a in the back here. There's a sponge. Do you see this little sponge here? Where my fingers? Or I'll move my fingers. Can you see this little sponge? And again, that just helps grab the water so that you don't splash around as much water. And so I have to just get the. And it is just a sponge, so if that one wears out, you can grab another sponge.
What is it? Sponge.
Sponge.
You said that word about 5 times.
I wasn't sure that people knew what I was talking about. So then we're going to put it on this top one. And sometimes it helps to start on one side and then kind of get it over. But you'll see I have the wheel really, really low, so it's pretty easy to put that on. And then all I'm going to do now is tighten it. So when I turn it clockwise, it's raising this wheel. And then eventually I'll get to the point where it's pretty tight. So, this is also a good, maybe power. I just thought of why power might have been nice.
But this one back here you haven't tightened
yep,
yet.
I have. Yeah, so I'm just getting it till it's kind of tight, right? Because you don't want it too tight, because when we tighten this back knob, it will also tighten it up. So I'm going to tighten that back knob to see where we're at. And you can see that's way too loose. So let's loosen that one up. Again, still raising. You'll see I kind of lost where I was at. There it goes. Again, I just kind of hold it in place while I raise it. This is like just...
You're off down here.
Yeah, I see that. Oh, I got off on the bottom. You're right.
Yeah, I was going to say, you must
I know. I was like, why? How am I?
Right.
I'm going up way too high. The wheel, I was bringing it way too high. And it helps to have... Let me drop it down a little bit.
What's happening?
Nothing, absolutely nothing. This is good.
Is this like breaking the broken piece?
Yep, that's
it.
it. I know you jinxed me.
I
Earlier,
know,
so.
didn't I? It's on, right?
Oh yeah, it's on.
Yeah,
So,
okay.
so and then once you get it kind of where you want it, then I'm going to tighten it up here in the back. And this is what I always do: is just turn the wheel. Again, this is one reason why you don't have it plugged in, and just to make sure it's tracking fine, right? So I'm moving this around. You can see it's tracking. So I didn't mess up the blade any. So the question then sometimes is, well, what sort of tension do you want on the blade? And usually what you want is, you want it to have a little bit of, if you can almost hear the sound that this makes, kind of helps you. If we don't have power right here, else I would turn it on, because that's the other thing you would look for is, and I usually look over here. I don't look here where the blade guide is at, because the blade guide will help really stabilize the blade. So over here, when it's running, you want to see a little movement in the blade. You want to see it just kind of wiggle back and forth a tiny bit. That tells you it's not too tight. If you're running this and this blade is as still as it can be, it's probably too tight and you run the risk of breaking the blade, right? That's the issue of it being too tight. If it's too loose, it's going to be just hopping back and forth when you look at it over here. So just a little movement is good, and that should be it. So that's replacing the blade.